Janet Stewart.
Greetings to all event attendees. While I wish I was with you in person, joining you virtually from my offices in Ottawa, Canada is the next best thing. Let's talk about the future of learning. I'm a learning experience designer. That means that I typically work with companies who need to create training for their employees or their customers, training that they just can't go out and buy easily in the marketplace, because the training deals with very specific information about their in-house policies, their practices, their procedures, or even their products. And so they need to work with someone like me to design, build, and deploy that training. Now, I spent more than 2 decades designing training for the in-person classroom, but over the last decade, my team and I have become specialists in designing learning solutions for the online classroom. The learning landscape has shifted, and as countries make the transition to the digital economy, so must the learning landscapes of these nations. In fact, the 2020 pandemic has accelerated the transition to the digital learning landscape. In previous decades, when an organization needed to train its employees or customers, it meant booking a conference room and coordinating travel, accommodation, and meals for many persons. Scheduling could be a difficult and time-consuming task, and invariably, some persons were not able to attend, leaving them with an important knowledge gap and no really good way to close it. Fast forward to the 21st century, learning has never been more accessible to more persons than it is now. The reach of e-learning today is greater than ever, with the most rapid growth happening in emerging economies, working to close the education gap. The combination of low ongoing costs, high convenience, and easy accessibility are transforming e-learning into the predominant global educating force of the 21st century. Digital learning enables us to move past the have and have-not societies that are created for those who have or do not have easy access to education and information because of their economic status or their geography. E-learning is an effective approach for the deployment of prerequisite training activities, education for the masses, and post-training performance support for those in the workplace, as well as for product and service support for customers. You may already be familiar with the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals. You can find out more about them on the UN website. They have this really neat interactive tool that tells you about each of them. I've made a personal commitment to 4 of the goals and outlined those in an article on my own website. Let's take a closer look at how e-learning supports the 4 Sustainable Development Goals that really speak to me. Sustainable Development Goal number 4 is quality education. In-person training requires a specific time, date, and place, which means that some persons just cannot access it. Moving to online learning solutions means that anyone with a device, even a smartphone, and access to the internet can participate in the knowledge economy. And we know that access to education paves the way to economic growth for individuals, families, communities, and even nations. Access to online education means that anyone can learn the knowledge and skills needed to participate in the digital economy. In my own case, the kind of work that I do, consulting with clients about their training needs and then building a digital solution, can be done from anywhere in the world. My work is not limited by my location. And in this way, access to online learning solutions serves to reduce inequalities in our world. Someone living in a remote community, as long as they have a device and access to the internet, can seek the knowledge and develop the skills that they need to fully participate in the global economy. They are no longer bound by their location or the need for deep pockets to be able to travel to seek education. And finally, e-learning is good for the environment. When people no longer have to travel to seek education and knowledge, that cuts our CO2 emissions. As much as I might have liked to travel to the conference to be with you today, by speaking to you virtually, I've saved a plane trip, and that's good for the environment. E-learning is a spectrum of digital choices, and there's no one size fits all. As we go through this presentation, I invite you to type any questions that you have into the chat window, and we'll be sure to get to them at the end. Your definition of e-learning comes from your experience with it. By now, you've probably experienced a lot of VILT, virtual instructor-led training sessions. And you may have also done some self-directed online training. Now, I don't expect you to be able to read or consume this very busy graphic, but what I want you to take away is that there really are a lot of choices when it comes to e-learning. The virtual instructor-led training is at the bottom of this hierarchy, and as you go up the left side, you'll see that there are 3 additional levels. And as you go across, you'll notice that we move from simple to typical to complex approaches. The important thing for you to know is that as you go up the chart, the learner retention rates increase, as does the complexity and the time and cost to produce. The same is true as you go across the chart. Learner retention rates increase, as does complexity and time and cost to produce. So we know that the word e-learning means lots of different things to different people, and it's time to have some fun. We're going to explore the spectrum of vocabulary that comes to mind by working together to build a word cloud. So I want you to grab your smartphone and open up the camera so that you can play along. I also want you to make sure that you can see the conference chat window because there's going to be some important information posted there in a moment. Now, before I show you how to play along, I want you to take a moment to reflect. Reflect on the words that come to your mind when you think of e-learning. We've already agreed that there are so many facets of e-learning, so get a few words ready in your mind. There's no limits to how many or how few you can contribute to this word cloud. Here we go. Open up the camera on your smartphone. An older phone might require a QR reader app to do this, so if it doesn't work for you, just open your browser instead and go to menti.com. That's MENTI.com. Point your camera to the code on the screen. A little box will appear asking if you want to go to Menti. Just tap on that little box. So first step, open up your camera, hold it up to the QR code on the screen. If that doesn't work for you, then you can still play along by opening up your browser and navigating to menti.com. The second step is look in the chat for the numeric code that you need to enter, and then enter that on your phone. The view on your phone should look something like the sample that's on the screen right now. The last step is to start entering all the words that come to your mind when you think about e-learning. Online learning, virtual learning, whatever you happen to call it. You can enter as many words as you like and then hit submit at the bottom. And you can enter more again after that if you like to. I'll give you a moment before I show you the word cloud that's forming. Okay, let's see what kinds of words are making their way to the word cloud. The future of learning, microphone, camera, convenient, fun, revolutionary, modern. This is a word cloud that we're creating using a free tool called Mentimeter. I set up a word cloud in advance, and then as people enter their words, it builds the cloud for us. And that's how you create a word cloud. And it's one of the techniques that you can use to make virtual instructor-led training more interactive and engaging. Some of the words that you came up with were specific to that live online kind of training, and other words spoke more to the self-directed training. Let's talk about my true passion, self-directed training. Self-directed online learning can be completed anytime from anywhere, as long as the person has access to a device and, in most cases, to the internet, though that's not always necessary. The instructor and the learner are not there at the same time. We call this the asynchronous environment. You might have heard that term used before. And self-directed training can be completed on a desktop, laptop, tablet, or smartphone. It's a great approach for training as well as for workplace performance support. Not surprisingly, a survey of 800 corporations revealed that 86% of them have shifted some, most, or all of their in-person training to virtual over the past few months. That's a huge number. Now, my personal observation is that many organizations scrambled to take in-person training that had already been scheduled and move it to live online. Some restructured the training and did it well, while others just took the death by PowerPoint approach. But that's a lesson for another day. The real opportunity in moving to digital training solutions is in the self-directed space. Many employees are only allotted somewhere between 20 and 40 minutes a week to do professional development. So if you attend even one live online class that's 1 hour in length, you've blown your budget for the entire week. But imagine self-directed training that can be completed in bite-sized pieces. A 15-minute course that's laser focused on one topic, or a 5-minute refresher on a process that's unfamiliar to you. This is the real power of self-directed training. The transition to the digital learning landscape was already well underway and had been for years, but the pandemic accelerated that transition. In the same survey results that were shared by the Learning Guild, 91% reported that their organization's future learning strategy will be permanently changed because of the crisis. And 71% reported an increase in the use of learning platforms. Platforms come in many shapes and sizes, but let me show you one example. You may have heard of the term LMS. It stands for Learning Management System. Your organization may even have one. An LMS is a digital space where you can organize your digital learning assets. These can be a combination of self-directed courses, live and recorded sessions, forums and discussion groups, and even micro videos. An LMS allows you to organize all of these assets in a way that makes it easy for your learners to find them. This is an example of what an LMS can look like. This is an LMS that we built for one of our clients. We've been creating self-directed courses and certificate programs for them for more than a decade. So you'll see that they have many areas of study and then many courses within each area of study. An LMS allows you to group things together to form certificate programs. For example, you could specify that the learner must complete a set of requirements in order to be awarded a certificate in a particular area of study. An LMS also gives you the power to set prerequisites, meaning that the learner must complete course A before they can complete course B, for example. And some learning management systems now have artificial intelligence built into them so that they can start serving up a personalized learning plan to each user based on their interests and previous completions. You need a learning management system if you want to be able to track course completions. In other words, if you want to know that someone has completed a particular requirement and when, and maybe even what score they achieved on their quiz, then you need an LMS. Not everyone needs a learning management system. However, they do have two benefits that make them worth considering. The ease with which they organize your content, be it courses, videos, or other digital assets. They can become the go-to place for information within your organization, and their ability to keep training records on your learners for you. But not everything needs to be organized into an LMS. Sometimes you might not be as concerned about record keeping. Perhaps you're a government department that wants to make information engaging and easily accessible to citizens. Or maybe you want to create some micro-training assets for your customers to access. This might help to reduce calls to your customer service department by making information about how to use your products and services readily available on your website. So let me show you what that might look like. First, let me tell you a little bit of background. This client's target audience is entrepreneurs who are creating businesses in the green energy sector. And on their website, they had a resource area where you could find a long list of tip sheets that were built in Word and saved as PDFs. You can see that the information was pretty plain. It was good information, valuable information, but it was really hard to consume because it was just black and white text. So the resource area on their website was not very helpful. So we took those 24 Word documents and we brought each one of them to life as a short course, each a 10 to 15 minute commitment, focusing on one learning objective. Then we loaded them onto their website to make them easy to find, right under their old resources tab. And we also used tagging to make it easy for someone to refine their search. So for example, if I want to learn something about branding, I can click on that tag and just those courses that have something to do with branding will come to the top. If you want to follow along and take a closer look at these self-directed courses, you can get to them by using this QR code. Just open up the camera on your smartphone, hold it up to the QR code on the screen right now, then tap the little box that appears, and you'll be taken directly to the resource area on the SNA website. And of course, if you're an entrepreneur, at least some of these courses may be of interest and value to you. Let's take a look at one of these courses together so that you can see the transformation from words on a page. When you open up the course, there is a bit of an introduction and a course outline. Then, when you start the course, it opens up and introduces you to the character in this course whose entrepreneurial journey we're going to follow. You can see that there are a number of simple techniques that we use to bring the content to life and create the opportunity for the learner to interact with the course by having to click on various things. We even used a photo with hotspots. And because this course is built in a product called Rise, it fits nicely into their website in terms of its look and feel. That's just one very simple example of how you can bring content to life in an online world, but it does take skill and ingenuity to do so. Go back a decade or more. When I was designing only for the in-person corporate classroom, it was enough to be an instructional designer. But now, to be successful in designing online training solutions, I've also had to develop the creativity of a graphic artist and the digital literacy skills of an IT professional. Let me show you another example of a self-directed course that demonstrates that point. In this case, we wanted to create an interesting way to move learners through a series of short videos on different but related topics. So we created an image with 5 doors and an intriguing image hidden behind each. In this way, we were able to allow learners to choose their own adventure. In other words, pick which door to explore first, and even created a bit of mystery by using images like a gorilla, which, if you watch the video hidden behind that door, you would realize was totally relevant. Some persons ask me, is it really possible to teach people in an online environment? Isn't it all about the instructor? I agree that a great instructor makes for a great course. And so I would also say that great instructional design makes for a great course. Let me show you another example. We were asked to create a course for workplace health and safety representatives. And one of the topics that we needed to cover was doing an inspection in a workplace. So my colleague Carrie and I put our heads together to think about how could we recreate a workplace inspection in an online environment when the instructor and the learner would not be there at the same time. We decided to work with the client and one of their frontline workers. We even borrowed a workplace for a day and staged a series of photos that have hazards in them. When the learner arrives at this point in the course, they are invited to see if they can find all of the hazards in each of the photos. And once they make their selection, then we use shadow boxes to top up and clarify. This way we know that all of the hazards have been pointed out before the learner can move on to the next screen. But again, what about real people? Isn't it better to have the subject matter experts in the room with the learners, teaching them in their own words? I'm glad you asked. We were asked to work with the members of a union to put together a series of courses that would form a certificate program. In this case, the subject matter experts were a group of very experienced workplace stewards. And as we went through the process of developing the content with them and then imagining how we would bring it to life, we decided that we wanted to bring them into the course to share some of the content in their own words. So we identified the content that really suited that approach. And of course, we wanted to have a balance and some variety throughout the design plan. Once we settled on the content to be covered by the stewards in their own words, my colleague Carrie scheduled a Zoom meeting with them, which we recorded. And that gave Carrie the raw footage that she needed so that we could integrate clips of them into the course design. And in this way, we were able to bring the subject matter experts right into the course, bringing the content to life in their own words. In fact, in this particular case, it could be argued that it was even better than an in-person experience because you would have only had the input from one steward in that case. But this way, the learner benefits from the views of 4 stewards instead. Let's recap. So far, we've covered 2 types of online training. VILT, which is virtual instructor-led training, and self-directed training, which often takes the form of courses that can be grouped together into certificate programs. But online learning provides for a plethora of choices, so let's take a look at some that could be used in the context of performance support in the workplace. I'm going to show you a micro video. Micro simply means short. A micro video on the topic of augmented reality.
Augmented reality is proving to be a very useful tool for providing employees with just-in-time training in the workplace. AR brings some elements of the virtual world into our real world, and in doing so enhances the things we see, hear, and feel. Imagine working in a warehouse where you need to operate large pieces of equipment. The operator arrives at a forklift that she's never used before, but is able to scan a sticker on the machine with a smartphone. The result? A 1-minute video appears to review the most important safety features of the machine. How's that for efficient just-in-time training?
Well, that's interesting, right? Imagine all of the things in a workplace that you could put a sticker on and then embed the training right onto that sticker. At the very least, you could put a sticker on the photocopier machine and embed micro videos about the most complex functions. How about embedding micro training onto the products that your company uses or sells? Instead of having to create customer training programs, you could identify the need-to-know information and include it in the packaging or put it right onto the product face itself. Some of you may know Valerie Grant. She's a well-known entrepreneur in the Caribbean. And her company, Geotech Vision, sells drones as one of their lines of business. We did a pilot project with Valerie's team last year. They wanted to create a micro training to embed on a drone. The goal was to be able to show the user how to set up and calibrate the drone right in a field, literally. I don't have the sound turned on right now, but we took a series of photos that they sent to us, then added a script which one of their team members recorded and sent to us as well, created a short video and embedded it into an augmented reality app so that we could just print it onto a sticker and then place the sticker on the drone. While this micro training may not be all the training that a person needs in order to know how to safely operate a drone, if you think of this video in the context of refresher training or in the field performance support, it takes on a new usefulness. Since we are still on the topic of augmented reality, how about bringing a written reference manual to life by embedding digital resources into it and thus bringing the book to life with videos, infographics, and other digital assets? Let's talk some more about flipbooks. I recently had to create some training for human rights representatives, and one of the really important bits of content that we had to cover and refer back to often during the live training was their organization's policy on harassment and discrimination. You can see that when we go to this public page on their website, the policy is very long and very plain, which makes it really hard for learners to consume and make sense of. As an alternative, we transformed the exact words of the policy into an infographic-style booklet, which we printed, but also embedded into a QR code to make it easy for everyone to access on the go. You can try it out too by scanning the QR code. Then, as usual, just tap on the little box that appears and it will take you directly to the flipbook. And just in case you're not able to check it out on your phone, here's a snapshot of what that policy looks like now. Huge difference from the original black and white words on a page. One last type of e-learning solution to tell you about, virtual reality. When I get to see you in person, I'll bring my VR goggles with me so you can try them out. In past decades, VR was something that only organizations with the deepest of pockets could use within their training programs. But the cost to play has come down significantly in terms of the equipment. Producing the programming, however, is still quite complex and time-consuming. However, it's worth it when you have physical domain learning objectives and there's an element of danger or safety concerns. We see VR used extensively in the nuclear and aviation industries as well as in the oil and gas sector, but VR definitely represents a growing opportunity. Are all of these approaches e-learning? Do you remember what I said way back at the beginning? That e-learning offers you a wide spectrum of digital choices? So yeah, they're all forms of e-learning. I get that the choices can be overwhelming, so here are 3 things you need to consider when choosing an e-learning solution. 1. Who's the learner? What's their demographic? What do we know about them, and how do they feel about this topic? 2. What's the learning objective? Are we tackling initial training with this solution, or is it meant to be performance support that can be accessed from the field? And 3, how do we expect learners to consume the training? If they work in offices and have access to desktop computers or laptops, that's a really different real estate than if they're salespersons who are out on the road all day and depending on mobile phones for their training information. There really is a strong case for self-directed training. It makes information accessible to everyone, regardless of their geography, and it allows us to provide performance and product support to employees and customers in ways that we could only imagine in past decades.